Okay, I'm going to show you really quickly how I did the accordion fold binding, and I apologize for my bad video skills. First, you're going to take your piece of paper that you want to make into your binding, make it the correct height for your book. Mine right here, if you can see, is 6 inches tall, but obviously you would normally have a piece that's 12 inches all the way across. I'm just showing you a smaller piece as an example. You then want to score it evenly all the way across the entire 12 inches. Mine is scored at 3/8 of an inch, but you can do half an inch if it's easier for you, depending on the kind of scoring system you have. Once you've scored the piece, lift it up and fold the item back and forth, just like you would a fan when you were in school. Make sure you really get each one of those creases really nice by pressing down with a bone folder or with your nail. And once you have your really nice even folds, then we can start gluing. But getting your folds even is important, because if you don't, then your book's going to get really kind of lopsided. And you can see these are pretty nice and even here. Choose which part is going to be the outside edge of your book and which part will be the inside of your book. So my inside is going to be here to the right, and my outside over here, like a normal book. So I'm going to glue these red flaps together, because we're going to glue the outside flaps together. You could probably use an ATG gun, but I really like wet adhesive, so I'm just going to use my Scotch glue. Put a pretty big, nice line down there. Press those two little flaps together really well. And you really want to rub it if you're using a wet adhesive to get it in there really smooth and make sure it's sticking really well. Then you can check that flap. It's glued super well. Look, you can see here actually, on my previous flap I had made, I didn't get enough glue in there, so I'm going to add back in some more glue. Rub that one together too. Good. And keep going. Keep gluing together all of your red flaps. You can see I have another one here. You would keep going, and what you get then are these little tiny flaps on the inside that spiral open, and ones that don't open on the outside is what you want. Let me show it to you in my book. You can see none of these flaps open on the outside. That's the outside of my binding. But if we open up the book on the inside, you can see the little flaps that are 3/8 of an inch. And what you do is you glue each item to these flaps. And I have glued behind the flap each time. So I have a little seam along the front, and then each item is adhered or glued to the back. I'll show you on something smaller. Here's an envelope, and if you flip it over, you can see that I adhered this envelope along to the back of the seam, just a tiny bit away from the very center to make sure that it had some room to close. But you can see how you get a very nice, flat-looking binding by just using these simple little accordion folds. And you can make as many as you want. You can actually adhere 2 sets of accordion folds together if your book needs to be wider. It's not a problem. And then when you get to the very end, I've actually saved space for an extra couple pages I plan to add in here. But when you get to the very end and you glue your last page in, you glue one more set of flap up against the back of your binding to create the final page. This is the back cover of my book. And again, these are just some extra spots where I'm going to add in some more pages. What's nice about this book is that you can see the binding gets really nice and thick, and it leaves room for all this stuff in here. I have like flaps and 3-dimensional items, but you can also see where, because I didn't glue it perfectly, it's a bit crooked. So depending on how much you care about that, you really have to pay attention while you're gluing your book together. But honestly, in the end, when it's on display and people are looking at it, they're really not going to notice that that's not perfect.